I'm actually in the development group. That was an old title. I spent a lot of time in sustainability and energy and engineering with the company when we were a public company. We actually bought this property when we were a publicly traded REIT. I have only 5 slides that I won't be able to show you, and I'll describe them to you as if I think they're impressive. And so far I'm not there yet, though. But in 2005 we started the due diligence process, and that process was one of a big team from our company and selected team members that we ended up working with on the development, going out and trying to get information on this building. I'm sure my counterparts can tell you when you deal with a publicly traded company like Verizon, it's not all that easy to get information. But in the end, we saw a building with incredible bones, if you will, and a really good superstructure, an abundance of power, an abundance of central plant capacity, but one that, in my very first slide, and you'll see this in Dan's slides, just is not very appealing. The location was incredible. So the board presentation in May of 2005 saw us asking for permission to buy 80%, a condo interest, in the building called the Verizon building. That 80% was a 40-story building. The 80% was 1 million square feet out of 1.2 million square feet of a precast backed stone and single pane glass curtain wall. We ended up with an incredible steel structure with asbestos all over it, which was an extremely difficult part of the project. A really dated main lobby and common areas. Chilled water central plant with Con Ed steam, again with an abundance of capacity. Built up constant volume and induction air side, which was extremely inefficient, both in terms of air delivery, of comfort control, zoning, and energy efficiency. Not to mention the fact that it took about 2 feet along the perimeter that was usable square footage. We also inherited a building that had extremely inadequate vertical transportation. Essentially these buildings have a minimal number of people, a lot of equipment, and they never really needed vertical transportation, so that's something that we had to spend a lot of time with. I had one humorous slide, and this is it. We established financial goals before we went to the board, and the mainstay of that was to make money. And any developer that stands up here and says that they're trying to be a good neighbor, they're doing it for sustainability, they're doing it to improve the neighborhood, to make their mark on society, is generally lying, because we're all in free markets, and we were a publicly traded company. We had an 8% dividend, and if we put out the kind of money we put out and didn't make money, there was going to be some serious problems. I mean, we might get bought out. Actually, that's exactly what happened. So the real financial goals that we asked for, the approval that we asked for, was to purchase 80% of the building for just over $500 million. Now, I've been in this business, on this side of the business, in the investment and development side, for 30 years, and $500 million is an amazing amount of money for a single asset. I'd like to say that we got the building for free, but it's a little, that's not quite true. We purchased whole companies for $500 million and less. Early on with Sam Zell and his organization, we bought single assets for $10 and $20 million. So this was a monumental deal. Even though we're a $44 billion company, to put out $500,000 that would not see a return for upwards of 3 years was a real big deal. It was a big risk. We did not have a partner. We didn't even put project-specific debt on this project. So part of that, that approval request was to establish a condo agreement with Verizon, and that was a monumental deal. renovate the building around Verizon's occupancy, and that, doing one of these as an empty shell is a difficult thing. I did a project in Boston with Howard Elkis called 28 State Street, and a very successful project, but extremely difficult even though it was empty. Doing it around existing occupancy turned out to be a major headache. We're actually through that tunnel now, finally. Never thought I'd live to see the day where I said that. The financial goal was to increase rents and manage costs to produce an 8.7% unlevered IRR. And you know, that seemed doable. Our initial strategy that was approved by the board included an extremely minor exterior renovation. Dan, I think we were going to really look at just the first 2 floors, the first 2 levels, and leave the rest of the building alone. And when Dan shows you the existing building, I'm sure most of you have seen it, you'll realize what a mistake that would have been. A minor HVAC renovation. Again, we're going to leave the induction units, we're going to leave the constant volume systems, maybe put some zoning in. Minor common area renovation, beef up the lobby, redo common areas, but that was about it. We're going to invest about $200 million on top of the $500 million that we purchased the building for, and try to get rents in the $75 to $80 range, which again were high watermarks for us. Even though we had a lot of New York properties, those were lofty rents when we purchased this property in 2005. And then manage that whole process to achieve the 8.7% IRR. After we bought the property and put together the team, and you'll hear about the team from Dan, we started really looking at other options. Even before we bought the property, a select group on our side, we really wanted to do a complete renovation. And it was just incredibly difficult to forecast the cost. In fact, I have an engineering background in mechanical and structural engineering, and without getting into the detail and opening up the building, it was extremely difficult to even guess at whether or not one we could do it in terms of taking the curtain wall off that was described earlier in the Pearl Street project, whether or not we could do that, and if we could, how much it would cost. And remember, during this whole thing, there's asbestos, about $14 million worth of abatement that we had to do. A real benefit for the Pearl Street project, by the way, that you didn't have that, trust me. So in the end, when we put the team together, we did open up the building, and we made the decision to really take the project from really what I would call a minor renovation to a full renovation and produce a building that would stand the test of time 30 years from now in terms of its exterior and interior architecture. We'd open up the view lines in the building that are incredible with Bryant Park. There's 270 degrees of view lines, and I know Dan has some slides that will show you that in this building that we're not taking advantage of, and greatly improve the sustainability. So we ended up doing an extremely major exterior renovation, major HVAC renovation. We got rid of all the constant volume and induction and went to a low temperature VAV system. Major vertical transportation. We used a very sophisticated destination control system and added elevating on top of it. Obviously we did the lobby and common areas. The final strategy cost a lot more, and I'm not going to give you that number. It scares me to even say the number. It's a little more than we originally budgeted, that's all I'm saying, right, Pat? We secured much higher rents. And we have various non-disclosure issues as we negotiated leases and contracts, so I'm not going to even get into that. I don't even know if I can tell you the rents we can get. We did get, but they're a lot more than $75 to $80 in that location. And in terms of managing the investment to a higher IRR, we did a much, you know, the IRR can't be absolutely defined until we sell the project, but we did really well on this project, even now when it's not fully leased at this point. So in the end, the decision to recycle this building to a new building turned out to be a great success in terms of its architecture, in terms of its financial performance, and sustainability. I spent a lot of time in the sustainability area. I have the opportunity to represent our industry in Washington in meetings with the DOE, with the EPA, and the Green Building Council on their various green and LEEDs initiatives. And you know, I always say, we're in free markets, we're in competitive markets, and we can put all the programs together in the world, but the real driver for a lot of this stuff that we do, and I think recycling older buildings in CBD areas across the country falls in this category, will come when there's an economic justification. And we're there now. This project, the Pearl Street project, I assume will demonstrate that, but we will be able to make a dent in the environmental impact and the use of fossil fuels that are consumed by buildings. And the slide, I've used that same information you've used before. It's about 70% of all environmental impact and fossil fuel use comes from buildings, not transportation. It's contrary to popular belief. And a big dent can be made in that. I'm not sure I agree with the popular Hollywood portrayal of the 80 feet of water that will happen if we don't do what we think we can do. But there will be an impact, there's no question about that. And it's a pleasure to be part of a team that made a little dent just in this project. We're really proud of it. And now I'll let Dan talk about the details.